All right, everybody, we start with this Fox News alert. Two very big stories happening right now revolving around the frontrunners of the 2024 campaign. President Biden has finally gone to East Palestine on a long overdue visit, more than a year after that toxic train derailment. We've got a lot to come on that and the reaction of people in East Palestine to this very late visit. But first, a New York judge dropping the hammer on former President Donald Trump's business empire, reaching a blockbuster verdict in the civil fraud trial and imposing a whopping $364 million penalty against his company. Trump is personally on the hook for $355 million of that. It is over what the judge ruled was a years-long scheme to dupe banks and others with financial misstatements and inflated the former president's wealth. Trump is also barred from serving as an officer or director of any New York corporation for 3 years. His sons, Don Jr. and Eric Trump, ordered to pay $4 million. They also will not be permitted under this decision to be officers of a New York corporation for 2 years. So the former president is at Mar-a-Lago and is vowing to appeal this decision. He has pulled no punches throughout all of these legal situations, and also when reacting to this verdict. He said this on Truth Social, quote, "This decision," in quotes, "is a complete and total sham. There were no victims, no damages, no complaints, only satisfied banks and insurance companies," in quotes, in parentheses rather, which made a ton of money. The Democrat who started the whole thing by suing the Trump Organization, New York Democrat Attorney General Letitia James. She is expected to speak about an hour from now. She also just tweeted and called this a, quote, massive victory. And it looks like she got exactly what she wanted. She ran on a campaign to do exactly this. Watch.
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president when our fundamental rights are at stake. I believe that the president of these United States can be indicted for criminal offenses.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the He's going to know my name personally.
I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, defending your rights, and then going home.
Incredible, right? I know pretty much everybody at the table is kind of jumping to talk about this, but I'm going to go to Judge Sneem first because she looks the most ready.
Look, this is an outrage. What you're seeing is an attorney general who in any other time or in any other day would have been removed from office based upon her promise to go after a person against whom there was no crime alleged. She just looked at him until she found something that she thought was appropriate. I have never seen a law that was written to protect consumers used against a man and an organization where not a one consumer was harmed, not one bank was harmed. They never missed a loan payment. They never were in default on any loan. Deutsche Bank and every other bank that did business with the Trump Organization made hundreds of millions of dollars. And let me be clear. Donald Trump and his organization made it very clear on their loan applications that they were disclaiming their evaluation and saying that the banks and the insurance companies and everybody else should do their own evaluation. And that's what the business world, that's how it works. They knew it. They understand it. They have forensic accountants. They have real estate evaluators. They have all kinds of people who assess whether or not the property is worth their investing in so that they don't lose money. And they never did lose money. And the Trump Organization never went out of business. They didn't scam anyone. No one is alleging that they were defrauded or wronged. This is, I'm tired of the word lawfare. This is an attempt by people to take down a former president who is beating the present president in terms of the polls and looks like he's going to beat him in the next election. This is what third world countries do. It's outrageous. And I've got, just so you know, I have Eric Trump, who's going to be on Laura Ingraham tonight, and he's going to talk about the fact that neither he nor his brother were any part of this evaluation process, and they have each been levied $4 million, I believe, when they were never in the back rooms and part of any of this stuff. So there's also another legal issue, and I'll finish. The appellate division decision, which is the court above this bozo, who I could go into, but I won't. They said that anything before 2014 is barred by the statute of limitations. This inept, incompetent, progressive leftist judge that I wasn't going to talk about, he then took all of the properties before 2014 and included them in his assessment of things that he felt were overvalued. So he is as corrupt as the day is long. And I'll end it at that, the judge.
You know, Jessica, politically, it just raises the question of whether or not this is overboard, right? We've seen it backlash and help this candidate every step of the way. $364 million. I looked up, I think Norfolk Southern paid about $350 million for ruining an entire town. I have accounts here of people who are devastated. My home is gone forever. I feel sick. I've felt sick for months. I mean, the egregiousness and the damage is so clear in these cases, right? Then look at another case, O.J. Simpson, civil case, okay? $30 million for the murder of 2 individuals. This number seems to come out of I don't know where, because you don't have anything documented by these banks that they were wronged to this dollar amount or that dollar amount. So it's like another punitive situation. Well, just because he didn't have enough remorse, we're going to make him pay $360 million. What's the political impact of this? Do you think it helps or hurts?
So first of all, I think that Norfolk Southern should be paying a lot more. And that was part of President Biden's remarks, and we'll talk about that in the next block. The family of Nicole Brown should have been paid a lot more for her murder. I mean, everyone should owe more in those kinds of cases.
In both cases.
Very clear crimes. But Donald Trump was convicted of this before we got today's sentencing. The judge had already found him guilty.
By just the judge.
But that is how the system works.
Libel,
You can change.
not convicted.
Sorry.
Yes.
Libel of inflating assets between $812 million and $2.2 billion. And I understand on the appeals front, and it will go to appeal. He has 30 days to do it. And I think his lawyer already has, that they are going to have to, as the judge said, prove that somebody was actually wronged by this.
Good
right?
luck.
That there was, well, we'll see what happens. But you can't deny the fact that Donald Trump is somebody who has consistently defrauded people, not paid his bills. I mean, this is what happened in the 2016 election when Hillary had a slew of ads about how he stiffs everyone from contractors, people who work in his buildings, et cetera. And this is the character of the man. These are huge inflations to get cushier interest rates. I mean, saying that his apartment in Trump Tower is 33,000 square feet when it's really 11,000. Mar-a-Lago, his tax broker, said $27 million, ranks it as a social club when he's running around saying it could be $1 billion. It's actually $517 million. They're consistent lies. They are trying to understand people. Just because Deutsche Bank got richer doesn't mean that it's wrong. Political implications. I happen to think, and have said this since the beginning, that no trials or convictions will matter except for things like in Georgia, and obviously that is complicated this week by what's going on with Fani Willis, and election interference and the Mar-a-Lago documents. But he does better in the primary. But if you look at, and we talked about this in Iowa and New Hampshire, when you talk to voters about what's going to happen in a general election and if he is convicted of something, 32% in Iowa said they won't vote for him. Over 50% in New Hampshire said they won't vote for him. People don't want to vote for a felon. They don't want to vote for a criminal. Right now, he can coast along and say, this is about bias against me. You know, I'd never touch E.G. and Carroll, even though he owes $83 million for doing that and then defaming her. So I think it does hurt him in the end, but not in this primary. He'll be even more of a juggernaut.
Jesse, what's your reaction?
Well, you're saying that people won't vote for a criminal. You're criminalizing him. All of these Democrats are just indicting him. And then you'll get a conviction, and then they'll get appealed, and they'll go to the court. You're ruining the process. You say this is how the system works, Jessica. This has never been how the system works. In the history of New York State, the Associated Press investigated, there has never been a case like this. Look at how this statute is supposed to go. A fake lawyer sells false claims, swindling people out of their home deeds. Some fake shrink sells some made-up solution to your head trauma. This is not the Trump organization. You say people don't want to be involved in the Trump organization? They have like dozens of Fortune 500 companies who are tenants in his buildings. People love working for the Trump organization, the doormen, the guys that work in the elevator. There's no people that are complaining about getting swindled who are working for the Trump organization.
Trump's name has been ripped off all of the buildings along the West Side Highway.
Okay.
These people don't want to live in something with the man's name on it.
You were talking about partisan activists in Manhattan.
All of Upper West Side are just partisan.
You're talking
activists.
about they took his golf club away. People love that course. Have you played it? You'd love it. If you could play golf, you'd love it, Jessica.
I can't. I'm a
probably
tennis
shoot
woman.
under par. Let me tell you something. This woman, Letitia, she campaigned on fighting people instead of crime. You can't go outside without worrying about getting pickpocketed. This city's a mess. And she's fighting a case like this with no victim, no losses. You have an apartment, Jessica. If you want to sell your apartment, or if you want to get a loan against your property, you go to the bank, you say, this is what the apartment's worth. The bank says, I think it's this worth. And then you guys come to an agreement and you get a loan or you sell it to somebody. That's how real estate transactions are done. If you are convicted of something like this for saying, oh, well, you know what, the apartment's maybe not 30,000 square feet, maybe it's less than that, that's a $300 million fine. You won't have real estate in Manhattan if that's the rule.
Good point. Speaking as the other judge here on the panel right now, I'm obviously not a financial expert.
You were appointed by me, though, so I just want to, just so we're clear.
That justifies all the robes I wear around the building. Back off, HR. I am a judge, and I'm not a financial expert. The last time my identity got stolen, my credit score went up 22 points, okay? This is not my purview per se, but to oversimplify this for the viewers, what we need to understand is when we say that no one is claiming victimhood, okay, meaning not the banks, not the lenders. Okay, this is the financial equivalent of convicting someone for murder, but no one's dead. And that's why we're outraged. There has been no crime from the standpoint of there's an aggrieved class we need to avenge. And that's why this looks so brazenly political. Understand, a lot of the attacks on Trump are being sold to us as an effort to protect democracy. That SOT you just played to start off the show was her denying the legitimacy of the 2016 election. It began with her going, we're going to get this illegitimate president and break him down. And she ran on that. The way they get away with this really quickly, and I don't mean to get all serious because people bring me on because I talk like I get paid in Tide Pods and tequila, and that might be true, okay? They manufactured a hysteria around Donald Trump. Okay, Trump was part of the fabric of polite society his whole life. The man hosted a primetime show on NBC for 15 years. He was not a fringe loony with a bunch of white supremacist friends. He was their friend. They went to Mar-a-Lago. They went to his wedding. The Clintons hung out with him. Absolutely. When he entered politics, they manufactured a hysteria of, we don't know this man. I'm like, you know, aside from all the selfies of you hanging out at his country clubs, you don't know this man. But what they're doing in this moment is they're going to this place of emotion that the rest of the country isn't on board with, meaning emotion denies you self-awareness that would otherwise tell you sound crazy. So they've taken this to a place where the rest of us are just like, I don't know, no one's mad about the loans. Shut up and move on with your life. Judge Jimmy has spoken.
Can I add one thing? Sorry. One of the things that
you're a real judge.
Yeah. Okay.
Whoa.
So you're overruled. One of the things Jessica says was, well, we've seen all these people who are ripped off by Donald Trump during the campaign or whatever it was. That doesn't mean that an unhinged judge can go in and say, I don't like what happened between you two parties where you both made money, and therefore I'm going to disgorge $360 million. This is America. We have a Constitution. There is a right to due process. That's not due process. And I will bet my house this is reversed on appeal.
Well, Trump should pay this in quarters.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.